Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Meta. So in this episode, I want to teach you guys the fundamentals of Google Analytics. And I know that we're doing the product series and some of you have heard of Google Analytics, some of you are considering using better tools. The truth is that Google Analytics is free. It's more or less free, and in my opinion is one of the best tools out there. Right? Maybe the only thing that comes a close second is maybe Heap or Mixpanel, but to be very honest, you don't need their tech when you have Google's tech. So in this episode, I'm actually going to show you real data. And this is data from JobSpire, which is the previous company I ran. We've done millions of requests in 2016 and 2017. So I want to show you some of that data. And I'm going to show you all the different parts of Google Analytics with real data. The reason it's so hard to learn data collection and analysis tools like analytics is that not many people have access to this data. And the people that have access to this data aren't willing to share it freely, right? Because it is proprietary stuff. So, because we've already sold JobSpire, it's easier for me to show you guys all this data. So let's get started. Okay, so the home isn't showing anything, and the main reason for that is because in the last 7 days, this is the data from the last 7 days. The last time JobSpire was active was late 2017, after which we closed the website. But let me just show you all the different parts of Google Analytics. I think the first place that most people start is real time, and we have no real time data because the platform hasn't been live in a bit. But all of the data here, whether it's overview, locations, traffic, content, events, and conversions, we have in audience. So we're going to shut real time and we're going to start from the second option available, which is audience. So this gives you data about your entire audience set. Where are they coming from? What do they do? Let me just show you. So we hit overview. I'm going to set some markers. I'm going to say, well, let's look at 1st of Jan 2016 to 1st of Jan 2017. Right? As you can see, we have close to 1 million users, that is unique people that have visited the website. Don't confuse this for signed up users. This is just unique people that have visited the website. Now, the way JobSpire functioned as a company was we had many different properties. We had the main recruitment platform where people came up and put their CVs and employers came and looked at different CVs. And at the same time, we had other platforms like the blog, like something called a backfill. So I'm only going to talk about the core platform, which was where people came up, put their CVs, and then recruiters looked at those resumes and CVs and decided to hire or not hire. So at an overview level, you see that there are about close to 1 million users. Most of them were new users. Almost 1.3 million sessions were conducted among these 900K users, and the average number of sessions per user was 1.45. The page views was almost 3.5 million, and most people spent about 2 pages per session. So session means each time they logged in or they came back. It doesn't necessarily have to be a login. It could be that I came in the morning, and then what Google does is it places a cookie on their browser, and the next time they visit JobSpire through that browser, the cookie activates and it says, hey, it's a new session by the same old guy, right? And so the number of pages per session was 2.60. So 1.45 into 2.60 is the total amount of time that people would have spent, or the total number of pages that people would have spent per person on the platform. The average session duration was 3 minutes. So if you're saying that most people had about 1.45 sessions, that means it's 1.45 into 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 15 seconds. That was the total duration spent on the platform. The bounce rate was 60%, which means that about 60% of people that came on the platform had nothing to do with jobs. They didn't care about it, so they just left, right? Or they didn't find the platform good enough, which is a smaller use case. So I'm actually going to go into the individual demographics. You can't actually see it from here because this data is old. This only keeps recent data, this area, but we're going to go through all of that in the demographics and in the interests and geo and all of that, right? So let me just talk about 2 things here, the lifetime value and the cohorts analysis. So both these tools are in beta, and that's why you will find almost no data here about it, because when things like cohort and lifetime came in, we were already done by the company by that point. But I'm still going to explain both lifetime as well as cohort analysis, maybe from some other platform. I think Google has a demo account which I want to show you these 2 things from, but we'll come back to this later, right? Let's go back to our audiences. All right, so audiences in User Explorer aren't really useful for us. This is very, very old data. So all these four things are fairly new. But let's go and dive deeper into the demographics, right? So let's look at the overview of the demographics. If you look at age, right? I think, again, overview is not showing anything. It's for some reason, this is not showing things. Google's not showing the dashboards correctly because this is old data. But let's go directly to in the overview, you see that there's age, and there's gender. You're supposed to be able to see a snapshot of this, but this page doesn't seem to load anything. But if you go to the actual age and gender pages, you're able to see stuff, right? So very quickly, you can see that, in this data period, out of the 541,000 people that we actually captured data for, because we implemented Google Analytics after a while in different phases, right? So you can see that about 53.57% of the people that came in were 18 to 24, right? And if you keep going ahead, you'll see that these people spent almost 463K worth of sessions, which is about 54% of the audience. And their bounce rate was in retrospect, it's actually much lower than people who between the ages of 25 and 34 and so on and so forth, right? So we were a fresher hiring platform. This is kind of obvious. We were helping people find their first or sometimes their second job. As you can see, they also spent more sessions on the platform, and they spent almost a full 50 seconds on average more than all the other age groups, right? So we knew our audience very quickly. We knew that young people wanted to be on our platform. Young people wanted to find jobs. So we were able to get this straight from tech, from the data. But there's something a little more deeper in this, right? We also realized that younger people were more likely to use social media and mobile phones and actually look for jobs online, whereas older people are more likely to look for jobs through referrals and asking somebody for an introduction. And they're more likely to use other job boards like Naukri.com. So this is not, you can't say that, oh, it's our platform doing this on purpose. I also think it's a function of the audience itself. And that's why you have to be very careful when you read data, because you get all of this data and then, you don't know the assumptions you're making, whether it's because of your platform or because people are naturally like that. And you'll see a lot of times here where people are just naturally in a particular way, right? You'll just see that some things repeat again and again and again. And I noticed this on Instagram, right? When I post a meme that a lot of people have shared with me, that gets a lot of engagement, thousands of shares. Whereas if I try to, put some content that I relate to, I get close to 0 shares. So sometimes I get less than 10 shares, or I get more than 1,000 shares. So it's hard to tell which side it's going to tilt to. But now I have a good idea and a good kind of intuition towards what is going to get 1,000 shares over what is going to get 0 shares. And the stuff that's going to get 0 shares, that's smarter, I tend to keep it for my YouTube and, platforms like Meta. So as you can see, the signed up conversion rate was 9.84% for 18 to 24. But surprisingly, for 25 to 34, the sign up conversion rate was 10.46%. For some reason, more people signed up, and this is a proper sign up, right? You can create an event on your platform. In the code, you can just say, well, tell Google Analytics that somebody signed up, that this person signed up. So first, not only do you place a cookie, you also alert the cookie when somebody finishes signing up, so that Google Analytics can show your business guy this dashboard, so that this dashboard doesn't have to be used specifically by a tech guy, right? Or a girl. And as you can see, the sign up rate steadily declines across age groups, where people who are 65 plus, we had 5,000 of those. They only signed up maybe 7.68% of the time. This is something that's expected, right? They also don't use technology that much. So if you look at the gender, right? So you have, reasonably obvious for a platform like ours, 57% of our audience was male, 42% of our audience was female. In fact, surprisingly, we have such a high female audience with JobSpire, right? We didn't expect this the first time we came in. And as expected, more sessions by the men, and the average session duration was actually higher on the female end, but I don't think this is statistically significant, right? I don't think this is enough for us to say that there's a big difference between them. Obviously, higher conversion rate on the sign up with males, but that's because I think, it could be, we don't know if this is statistically significant. And that's why I should do the data part of this course, because we never actually put all of these things through statistical significance. We didn't actually test all these things or run experiments. I was too young back then, and I thought that, collecting this much data was great in the first place. And for most companies, it's enough. right? But I'm somebody who likes to dive really deep and find out why something is actually happening, right? I hate two things just happening by correlation. I want to know the causation. All right, so let's go to interests. And I don't know if the interests were captured. There's a data retention period. Yep. So we can see if the dashboards don't show up, so I can show you each affinity categories. And as you can see, a lot of people from our audience, they were, banking and finance people. They were, food and dining people. And this is all attributes that Google gives people, right? So if I click on this, I can sort it by the size of the audience. So let's see in descending order where our people came from. So a lot of people were media and entertainment and movie lovers. Google categorizes them, right? Most of them like technology. That's 5% of our audience. News and politics and news enthusiasts, 4%. Again, TV lovers, travel buffs. And these are ways we can actually make ads for all of these different people, right? When we know that somebody is coming in who really likes travel, then we can show that person ads for JobSpire and say that, look, if you find the job you love, then you can go out and travel, right? You can do the things you love. So it was easier for us. But one interesting correlation is a cricket enthusiast has a 3% sign-up conversion rate, because at the end of the day, we measure ourselves on Google Analytics by the number of people who signed up, right? So as you can see, only 3.5% here converted, whereas, let me just click on this. Let's see what our highest sign-up group is, ascending order. The technology folks were the highest sign-up rate, almost double of people who liked cricket. So these are just some interesting insights that I want to show you that you can get from Google Analytics, right? And you can set goals on Google Analytics, you can add segments, and these are all just ways to slice this data, right? So that you can keep your markers, your eyes on the right goal posts. All right, so you can see in-market segments here, right? You can see that, let me just click on this, new users sorted by ascending order. You can see that, this is an employment platform, so obviously people who liked employment platforms came in, but education, and then people who liked phones. So this is by in-market segments, right? And the difference between in-market segments and affinity are the things I like. In-market segments are what segment am I in, right? What segment does Google categorize me in? And that depends on your behavior on Google, right? And again, Google's super smart. Let's look at geo, right? Geo is geography. So if you see the language, you'll see that, most people's language actually wasn't, let's just sort this by ascending order, right? You can see most of these people are American speaking or have an American keyboard layout. That doesn't mean that they're Americans. It means they have an American keyboard layout, which is the standard. A lot of other people have a Great Britain keyboard layout. And then you have people who have an Indian keyboard layout, probably the rupee symbol on their keyboards or on their phones. It's possible to change your keyboard layout on your phone too, right? So, actually, this is very interesting. I want to look at this. What is this? Secretgoogle.com, you are invited. Enter only with this ticket URL. Copy it, vote for Trump. That's 1,000 people. That's interesting because people do not set their language by themselves. It's probably a virus on somebody's phone or a computer that automatically sets your keyboard layout to normal, doesn't change anything, but make sure that whenever some data tracking tool like Google Analytics picks you up, the language set is you are invited, vote for Trump. That is ingenious. I didn't even know this existed, but that's fantastic. So let's look at location for a bit. We can see that, quite obviously most of our users are from India. We had almost 39,000 users from United States. That's fine too. But as you can see, the sign-up rate, if you look at sign-up rate, most of the people who are from India, the rate of their sign-up was 9.58%, right? So, but the rate of sign-up by somebody from the United States was much lower, right? And this is expected, right? But whereas somebody from United Arab Emirates, higher sign-up conversion rate. But, these are all expected things. But we can drill down, right? We can actually click on India. And we can see where in India people came from. We can actually, I'm just going to. You can see that 19% were from Karnataka, 18% were from Maharashtra, then certain people from Delhi. And this is all useful, right? Because if we know Karnataka is responding really well, then we run more ads on Facebook and Google to people in Karnataka. It's clockwork. It's easier. If I have a really high sign-up conversion rate on people from Karnataka, I'm going to continue doing that. Whereas but you can see that most of the sign-up rates across all of these are fairly constant. it's not magically changing, right? So these are all things that are expected. The city doesn't matter so much for a recruitment platform like ours. Most of these are tier 1 cities. And as you can see by the city, I just clicked on city here, which is the secondary you can add a secondary dimension. So you can just see, well, so I'm just going to set region, and then I'm going to see if device category. And as you can see that it shows you a combination of two different fields. So you can see people in Karnataka who came from desktop, and you can see those numbers. And then you can see people, I can just sort it by the desktop, or maybe tablet. It gets sorted by tablet. I can change the order by clicking this. But as you can see, the people from Andhra Pradesh who came via tablet, that's 106 new users, right? And their sign up rate is 8.21%, whereas people from Assam who came from tablet, 23 users, their sign up rate was 4.17%. But the reason you shouldn't look at that 4.17% is because it's just 23 users. That's too small a sample size. So try to look at where you have at least 1,000 users, that's minimum. And obviously, when you gain some insights out of hundreds of thousands of users, you'll say a lot of users behave the same. That's why our sign-up rate is consistent across city and across different regions, different states. Right, so let's look at behavior. I think Geo, that's it for behavior. Let's look at, right? You can see that the number of people, almost 945,000 people had at least one session. And then out of that, 197,000 people had at least 2 sessions, and then so on and so forth. You can see obviously the funnel dips, but suddenly there's a spike between 9 to 14 sessions. That's 22,000 people. And I assume that's because they got an employer response after their interview, and they kept going on with that. But you can see that this is super interesting because you can get to see, what percentage of your audience is returning. And these are fairly standard numbers across different platforms as I've spoken to different entrepreneurs. So you can see the new versus returning. You can see there are 945K new users. Returning visitor, obviously, is not going to show under new users. It's going to show on the sessions. You can see 30% of the platform comes back, right? And that's probably people who've gotten a response, who want to change their profile, who want to apply to new jobs. That's returning users, right? And that's fairly normal. And you can also see that the pages per session is much higher on a returning user than on a new user, on a new visitor. See engagement, right? You can see the amount of time they spent on the platform in sessions. You can see that there are 26,000 people who are hardcore lovers of the platform, who spent at least 1,800 seconds on the platform. This is cool. This is how the world works. And you'll always have this audience that spends a lot of time on the platform. You'll have a lot of people who come, just spend a few seconds and then leave. But then you have to look for the people who spend a lot of time. That's where you'll usually make your money off. Right, so let's look at technology. This should be obvious. It just tells you the browser and the OS. I'm just going to sort this by the users. Right, so now you can see that most people from our platform came on Chrome, and the sign up rate on Chrome, and this is one of the reasons you should have an event tracker, right? You should say that, okay, Google track signups, right? We were only tracking signups. That was quite basic. And you can see that the difference between a sign up rate on a Chrome and a Firefox is so similar. It's eerily similar. And that means that the browser doesn't really matter for sign up, but it could matter for things like pages per session, right? Actually, there's no real difference here. Now, I want to tell you, look at this, right? 96,000 and 693,000, they're both large sample sizes. You can make inferences from data with such large sizes. And you can see, at scale, users behave so similar. Like the similarity between how they behave strikes me as, like, I've seen this happen many times, right? Every month, the same sign-up rate, the same 9.79, 9.8, 9.81 sign-up rate. And I was like, what the hell? How do humans behave like that at scale? How are we getting the same numbers every month? It's just how humans are. We're predictable at scale. When we zoom humans out and their behavior out, they're predictable, right? And that's what I'm trying to show you, apart from also telling you about Google Analytics. If you can find a predictable thread across users, you can make your money. Right, so you have this UC browser, and I didn't even know UC browser is a standard or a big browser until I started seeing this data. And then when I saw that 49,000 people have come from a UC browser, and my developers hadn't optimized the platform for the UC browser, it kind of, I wasn't very happy with it. So we ended up optimizing for a UC browser. And most people told me that, hey, UC browser is a spammy browser. Why would you, optimize for it? Well, a good 5% of my audience comes from there. I'm not going to lose them, right? So you can look at operating system. You can see that about 61% came from Windows, 28% came from Android, 2% came from iOS. That's actually pretty strange. And 2% came from Linux, and then about 2% came from Macintosh. But that's okay because you still have, these are still sizable numbers, right? 26,000 people coming in from iOS is not small. 20,000 people coming in from Macintosh is not small either. You might think, well, there should be a lot more iOSs. Well, not really. Because India is not filled with people who can afford an iPhone. And especially when you have a job platform that has thousands, if not nearly 1 million people hopping on hopping on per year, and we grew beyond that, right? So when you have so much data, you realize that India is much below the poverty line, right? And seeing an iPhone is actually a rarity. You might see an iPhone, and I don't know if you have, but if you have, that's actually not the norm in the country. You're blessed in a way. It's just how the world is. But you can also make some inferences, right? You can see the people on iOS signed up much less often than the people on Windows or on the people on Android. Windows and Android were similar. And that's because, from our research on this, people who look at or who have an iOS platform, they don't need jobs that desperately. They stay away from startup jobs, in fact. All right. And that's just how it is. It's part of the game. All right, so let's go to network. Network is interesting, right? Network is basically a way for Google to tell which ISP sent this data. You can see most of these people were broadband people from BSNL, and BSNL is just a rerouter. So it could be ACT, it could be anything, right? And just going through BSNL. You can see people coming in from Beam. This is not very useful data for us. We don't care so much about it. And as you can see, when that data is not relevant, all the sign-up rates look very similar, right? So don't worry about it. So let's go to mobile. Look at the overview. You can see that, just give me a second. Yeah. You can see that, about 67% of our platform came in from desktop. We had a hypothesis that people on the desktop are going to sign up more than people on mobile. We thought that, well, it's an entire sign-up form, right? Our sign-up form is very long. Our sign-up form literally says, put in your CV, what is your CTC, how much salary do you expect? It's a very long sign-up form. So we're kind of surprised that we thought that it's easier to do on the desktop, but look at this data here. It seems like people on mobile are signing up more often than people on desktop, right? That's weird, right? It's sort of unexpected. It changed my mind a little bit. And then I realized we're going mobile first. And this was a long time ago in 2016 where people were still having this debate about desktop versus mobile. Today we know mobile is the future, but I've been screaming it for a while. Okay, so let's look at desktop. We can see obviously people spend more time on the desktop. It's about 3 minutes, 50 seconds session duration on a desktop. And it is the majority of the audience, primarily because for you to upload your CV or edit your CV, you'd do that on a desktop. So what we'd find is people would sign up on a mobile, but they wouldn't apply to jobs or put in their cover letters on the mobile. They would do that primarily on the desktop. And we used another event tracking platform called Mixpanel to figure out this tail end data, which you don't need with Google's event tracking now. So let's look at devices. You can see, just play this. Right, so you can see that as expected, it's about 23,000 people on an Apple iPhone, and everybody else was using more or less an Android device or some sort of computer, some sort of Acer, blah, blah, blah computer, which is normal. But this data, as you can see, correlates very strongly with the amount of people who are using iOS. So we don't need to look at cross-device. That's in beta again. Google actually asks you to do something with cross-device. I think they'll ask you to embed something. Yep. So you have to activate Google Signals, and this kind of it allows you to see whether somebody's gone from phone to desktop and whether it's the same person. Not very useful for us, at least on this platform. All right, so the custom allows you to create custom variables. Benchmarking, again, it allows you to basically figure out some thresholds where, it sends you alerts if your sign up rate hasn't hit a perfect kind of rate, and you can benchmark against data in the past. Right. So let's look at acquisition now. Acquisition is where your traffic comes from, right? And as we can see, again, for some reason, the dashboards of all of these are not showing any data. Something wrong with our platform, right? And let's change this. Let's change this to 01 Jan 2017 to 01 Jan 2018. So as you can see, almost 125,000 people came in from organic search. You can see that, the direct traffic, people directly coming to jobspire.net was 38K. Let's change that to 2017. So about the time where we sunset JobSpire, right? 2017, 2018. But take a look at this. You can see that advertising, people who came from advertising were about 200K, 473K. There was no way to tell where they came from because they might have come from anywhere, and maybe tracking wasn't set on their, maybe a Google cookie wasn't set on their phones or devices or laptops or browser in specific. Organic search, which is people actually looking for jobs or find jobs in India. In fact, we were ranking #1 for startup jobs in India, right? So stuff like that. Direct, 88,000 people came in directly, which is directly typed in jobspire.net. Referral, which is outside of Google search network. So maybe from some other website that came in, say, some blog.com referred to JobSpire, but because Google already knows, or that's on Google's crawler, it knows that people came through that link. So about 16,000 people came in from referral. And you can actually see this, right? You can see the source and medium. Right? You can see all the different places where, and this source and medium and this source and medium are similar. A lot of our traffic came in from sites like Charisma that gave you backfill, where excess jobs were on their platform, and they look at it and they'd come to our platform to learn more about the job. So we had different places. You can see Indeed, another big source of backfill. You can see Google, more organic, quite a bit of traffic. But one thing that I want to show you is referrals, right? Which websites are we linked on that brings us traffic? And as you can see, about 27,000 people came in from linked traffic. And you can just Google what referral traffic is. You'll get a better idea of it. You can see Facebook, you can see Google Weblite, which is actually Google's own platform, which they call it. I mean, they attribute it as separate traffic. I have no idea why. So don't worry too much about this. Google Ads, again, we weren't running any Google Ads at that point. And I want to show you something interesting, right? Something that I learned very recently, or which I didn't utilize enough in JobSpire, right? Let me show you. We had 0 new users from email. We didn't send out one email campaign to new users. That's because we didn't know where to buy a database. We didn't know the existence of tools like Foxbound. Actually, tools like Foxbound didn't exist at that point. And this is, I mean, for somebody who talks so much about email, I spent a lot of time emailing investors, emailing, potential clients, but we never emailed to get new users onto the platform. We didn't even know where to get their email. So just to show you that 0, I mean, we got nothing from email. So yeah, it's a learning. It's a learning. We should have looked at it and said, why aren't we getting people from email? But we didn't do that. So I'm not going to show you Google Ads. We didn't run any ads. We won't have any data on that. And the Search Console is, let me just show you what Search Console is. It allows you to improve your rank in Google search. It basically brings in search data from Google Trends back here. We're not going to look at it right now. It's not that important. So again, same with social and campaign, not very useful. Let's look at behavior, right? And one thing I like to look at in terms of behavior is the behavior flow. Okay. Behavior flow shows you when traffic enters your website, how does it flow? So as you can see here, some data in this report is unavailable because it is older than your data retention period. Yep, that's been giving us some issues. But as you can see how people flow through the platform. Obviously, we have much bigger numbers than this, but it's only showing some data. And you can see that some people go to companies/companies. So we have jobspire.net/companies, where we showed all the companies. And then some people from there were going to jobs, about 41.4% through traffic. And here we have about 58.6% drop-off rate, which means at this point, right after companies, people decided, yeah, I'm done. I'm not going to look at this, right? So you can see that 3% of total traffic from these 20 sessions went to jobs. Again, the data is not correct, but I just want to show you the idea that you can see how traffic flows. And the more you can see how traffic flows, the more you know which pages perform better. At the end of the day, we're all in the field of, at least when it comes to, if you're running a platform and you're doing data like this, we're all in the field of keeping users on our platform for as long as possible and eventually making them make a purchase. And the only way you're going to know how that happens if you see this flow. So you can actually see the site content. You can see how, let me just rank the unique page views actually. You can see a lot of people went to applicants/sign up. That is the sign up page for us. 4.92% people went directly to jobs. And this is fairly standard, right? You can see that when we do a drill down into the content, you'll see that the page views, not the unique, but total page views on jobs was 1.2 million. And if I click on this, I think you can drill down on this. Right? You can see which are the top jobs that people went to. Right? Now I'll just show you. So we have Practo. So people who are looking for jobs in, oh my God, I did the other way around. Right. So you can see that one thing that people wanted was they wanted to see jobs in particular fields. So we had a page where they could see all the different fields. You could see, computer science engineering, civil engineering, blah, blah, blah. You could see all that. You could sort by city. So obviously people spent a lot of time searching and sorting. RaidMax Technologies had a lot of people on their job. I have no idea why. We had head honchos, we had Practo, and I'm sure as we go forward, we'll see some big company names. Asian Business Exhibitions, Think and Learn, Squadron, Head Out, Marching Ants, which is, I think, a very famous digital agency. So again, we worked with almost 1,500 companies. I'm sure you'll find most popular companies in this thing. I don't know if I'm allowed to show all of this data, but fine enough. So let's go to site speed. The site speed says that the average load time of the page was 21 seconds. And this has been a point of contention between me and my developers. I used to say, how can we have 21 seconds for a page to load? And then that's because I was stupid, right? Because I didn't know exactly how this worked. But the point is, the average page time was skewed because when people went to the company's page, firstly, back in 2016, the internet in India wasn't that fast. It was actually terrible. And our company's page had so many images. We had thousands of images on that page, but eventually, towards the end of 2016, we changed the algorithm to only show 5 companies at a time. So this data is a little bit skewed. You're just looking at 1 year data, right? And you can see from the page timings that the most laggy page was the /companies page, as expected, because it had a lot of images. Whereas all the other pages were fairly, they were okay. There wasn't too many issues. In fact, pages like applicants and editing your profile, those weren't expensive. You can see speed suggestions. Things like user timings, for example, the reason they don't show up, they'll show up in your data. It's because these things weren't there on Google Analytics back then, or we're either that or we're out of the retention period. But you can, again, a lot of this data is repetitive. It's just allowing you to see the same bunch of information in different ways. So if you look at speed suggestions, you can see that, I think companies was the issue, right? So you can see, let's see the jobs page. Let's see what problems there are. Right, so it analyzes your data. And again, Google is fantastic. There's no reason for them to do this for free, but they're getting the world's data. They know more than anybody else does. They know how humans behave at scale. So you can see that you have to minimize, it gives you some diagnostics, right? It says that, minimize critical request depth, right? So make sure you're not calling JavaScript from everywhere. So we were calling jQuery from offsite. Lot of things, right? Keep request low and request counts low and transfer sizes small. So it's telling you that, your script document, which is JavaScript, was very expensive in terms of computation, in terms of response time, right? And third-party usage, we were using some Google APIs, and that was lagging things down. So I think they acquired a company. I don't know what Lighthouse is, but it seems to be some tool that, it's an open source tool that improves the quality of web pages. So that's how we're getting our page scores. Again, Google tells you what to do. You don't need to put in the effort. And this is why I think people in data analytics are going to find their jobs suddenly starting to dwindle, because computers are not stupid. They're getting smarter. So that's it, right? Things like events, you can actually put in practical events. You won't see any more data. Site search, you're not going to see any of this data. And I don't look at things like conversions because we didn't have those goals set. And you can set goals, right? You can always set a goal metric 1, goal metric 2. Let me just show you what that looks like actually. Right? For example, one of the goals for us, I think this was our goal, right? So we wanted people to complete the sign up, which was the new sign up equal to true. And you can see that, of the small amount of data that's being picked up, and it's not showing the entire data because we set the goal sometime late. You can see that, you can set different goals. You can say if people reach this page, then the goal is accomplished. So if you were testing for something like people who've paid for your product, then your goal should be that post product, hey, thanks for buying page, right? So those things are important. Well, so this is Google Analytics in a nutshell. If you want to put events in, like actual tracked events in, you can go in depth. You can set event triggers in Google. You can also use tools like Mixpanel. Let me show you that. But that's a paid tool. You get something free up to 100,000 or 150,000 or something like that. And I like Mixpanel a little more because you can do a lot of slicing and sorting. I just like the UI. At the end of the day, you can see all the different cohorts. You can see everything, right? And Mixpanel, I don't know what the pricing is like. Again, we don't work with this company. Couldn't care less about them, but we've used them for a while and we know that their stuff, it's free. You get up to 1,000 monthly tracked users, and we've been tracking a lot of data on Mixpanel as well. Maybe in the paid part of our content, I'll show you how to do, in the paid part of Meta Pass, I'll show you how to do Mixpanel. A lot of things have changed. One last thing I need to show you, right? Which is, let's go to all accounts. Let's go to Google's demo account. Right, so Google has a test demo account, which is recent, because I want to show you cohorts. Without cohorts, cohorts is something where that's very important, that we don't have on our data because it's been years since we've seen cohorts. But yeah, this is Google merchandise store, and as you can see, they've had 5 million requests, obviously, because they're Google. That's 5 times JobsPower's site, and this is for a merchandising store. Pretty cool. But the time on page is much lesser. It's like less than 35 seconds. It's actually 35 seconds. So if you see their behavioral flow again, and this is a demo account, right? All you have to do is go to Google and type Google Analytics demo account. And if you click on this, the demo account, that's support.google, this thing, you can access the demo account by clicking on this link here. So all of you can play with and mess with data. All right, so you can see the flow. Okay, you can't see the flow. I don't think people are going to YouTube. So again, I think some data here isn't very good, but let's do this, right? Let's go to the cohort analysis. And we've spoken about lifetime value, right? LTV. And I'll come to what that is, but this is cohort analysis. In cohort analysis, you can see, and I've set the date ranges the last 7 days, you can see how many people revisit the website. So you can see that on 29 September 2019, maybe 100 people came, or whatever number of people came, 2.94% of them came back the next day. 1.34% of them came back the day after that, 2 days after acquisition date. And obviously the color chart fades out. But something interesting happened on 30th September, where 5.19% of people came back the next day. Right? So these are interesting. When you launch new features or when you're A/B testing something, you can, using data, just see how it's doing. Right? How well is it doing? How are people coming back again and again and again? A platform like Google Merchandise Store doesn't need great cohorts, because once you buy a shirt, why would you want to come back? But if you're a platform like Facebook, then cohorts, or if you're a social media platform, then cohorts are very important for you. It's about day 1 and day 2 and day 3 and day 4 and blah, blah, blah. After the first time somebody comes to a platform, what percentage of them come back? And that's what Cohorts is about. I wasn't able to show you this stuff on JobSpot. But lifetime value, you can actually set a dollar value to the amount that each person brings you if they hit a particular page. So you can see that if the revenue per user, right, the lifetime value is $0.74, and actually it's not if, it's the revenue of people coming in directly to the Google merchandise score, because they know a lot about where they already know they want to buy Google merchandise. Otherwise, why would you go to the Google merchandise store, right? But the people who stumbled upon it or searched on it, the average revenue is about $0.74, not very high. But the people coming in direct are very high intent audiences, and their revenue per user is much higher. It's like $5.25. Right? So this is awesome, and you can see the total earnings. You can see that direct brought in about quite a bit of the revenue, and you can see that things like affiliates brought in close to no revenue. Social also brought in not much revenue. Referral brought in very high revenue. Referral brought in very, very high revenue. And I think paid search, well, I think Google merchandise is running ads. They brought in about $1.53 in revenue. Whenever I invest in a company, I always look at their paid search numbers, because paid search is something that if you throw in another $100,000, you're more likely to get the exact same numbers on the data. So it's awesome. It's scary how accurate it is. All right, guys. So LTV in Google Analytics case, one thing I want to add is revenue per user in the first 90 days after acquisition, right? And that's just something that you guys need to know. So if you follow the rest of the product course, you know what LTV is. It's lifetime value. And yeah, that's it. This is how you calculate all the cool stuff we've learned about in the product session. This has been a long episode. Thanks for joining in.